So welcome back. Here we are, this week 3 assignment for Web Publishing 1, Spring 2012. And we're just going to do a fairly short piece of the chapter in the textbook. We're going to go from page 59 to page 72. So it's not a lot of material, but we're going to do a couple of really dramatic things. They're very simple, but what we're going to do is take what now is, let me get rid of this. Okay, what now is a single web page, and we're going to transform it into a website. And in the process, since we're going to have 3 pages instead of 1, we're going to have to set up a way that we can move between them by setting up links. So we're going to set up a simple navigation setup using an unordered list, which these days is definitely considered best practices in terms of navigation to set it up as a list. So, like I said, a couple of things, fairly simple, fairly short this week, but very dramatic in terms of what they're going to do. Now for the demo, I'm going to use the actual file that the textbook provides. What you have on your own site is much more interesting than this, but this gives me the basic code to work with. Each of you has a much more personalized version of this with your own information in it. So it's not going to look like this, but hopefully you're following in the same structure that the book has. That way all of these individual weeks are going to fit together because we're all doing the same thing. Now one thing I noticed, because I saw some problems people had in the homework, and I went back and I looked at this, and I think that they did us a disservice in how they use their comments in this particular example. Because what they did is they used a comment to mark the end of the header div, which starts up here, but they neglected to mark the ends of the other divs. So I noticed that a couple of you got a little bit confused over that. So let me point out what's going on here. Here's a div header that opens here, and then it's followed by another div that opens called Site Branding, and that one closes right here. So to make this a little bit more obvious, let's put in a comment, end of Site Branding. And I'm not sure why they didn't do this. It would have made a lot more sense if they had, but we're going to fix it. Alright, so Site Branding opens, Site Branding closes. Tagline opens. And if you look, tagline closes right here. So here we're going to put end of tagline. Oops, let me get that right. End of tagline. And then we have end of header. So this is the section of nested divs. Site branding and tagline are nested within the bigger div called header. This is maybe one more div than most people would put in there. I think that typically folks would not include a separate div for tagline. This H1 and the tagline would probably fit in the site branding div. So they've maybe overdone it a little bit with that extra div, but that's okay because later on in the book you'll see we're going to do some styling things with that. But again, as we have it now marked off with our comments, the nested divs, 2 other divs nested inside header. Then we go down to body content. All the way down here, which goes down, let me scroll a little bit and move this so you can see it. Goes all the way down here, and what I've asked you to add in yours is a footer div. So div ID equals footer, and then I've forgotten exactly what's in there, some sort of content, and then close that div, and we're going to mark it just so we remember this, end of footer. So on a very simple web page like this, you may think that this is a little bit overkill in terms of comments, but you'll see as these sites get more complicated, this becomes really helpful. The other thing that let me suggest that you do is, if you notice when I was typing this, because this is a very short line, I could have easily put the div on the same line. The reason I didn't do that, I put that closed div on a line by itself, and in fact it's actually even better if we do it this way: open div, what's inside of it, close div, because then it's very easy to see what we're looking at. So the browser doesn't really care whether we put these on different lines. So if you notice the style they've been following in the book, which I would recommend, is you have the opening div tag on a line, then the content that goes inside of it, closing div tag on another line. That way it's relatively easy to see where the open and close div tags are, and you can match them up to make sure they match up. And Text Wrangler, as you notice, is actually indenting these in a way that's fairly helpful. So the div tags are actually outdented a little bit from the content, or if you look at it the other way, the content is indented a little bit. So much more helpful to do it that way. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to jump ahead. In the book, we're jumping to page 64, basically, where we start putting links in and we put the navigation in. And the reason I'm jumping ahead, you'll see that in a minute, but I want to get the navigation set up on one page, and then we're going to split that page into 3 pages, and magically the navigation will appear on each of those other pages when we make them. It's just going to save us a little bit of time. So let me see where they're putting the nav after the tagline. So that's what we're going to do. So right in this area, so this is site branding, bubbleunder.com. This is the tagline, and then this is the start of the body content. So right here is where we're going to put our nav for nav div. So actually, let's put it after the header. And this is a very typical format for a web page, that you have a header, then you have nav, and then you have content. Pretty standard. So we're going to set up another div, id equals. Now in the book, they call it, I believe, navigation. Yeah, we're going to call it nav. And there's a reason why we're going to do this that will become obvious a little bit later. So I don't want to confuse you with some things that are going to be happening soon. Just for the sake of getting this done, though, I would suggest use nav instead of navigation. It'll work either way, but this terminology, nav, is, like I said, it's going to be helpful a little bit later on down the road. All right, now to make sure we close that div, let's just close it right now and put in there our comment, end of nav. And I think you'll find if you do this open and close thing consistently, it's going to help you keep these things straight. So now we're going to put something in between those opening and closing tags. What we're going to do is we're going to put our navigation. We need 3 items that we can click on, because we're going to have 3 pages at the end of this. We're going to have an index page, an about page, and a content page. And we're going to put those inside of a UL. And if you remember from last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, this is a UL, unordered list. And again, let's do this. Let's close it. And now we're going to put something inside of that. Let's clean this up a little bit. And inside of a list, any kind of list, OL, UL, whatever, you have list items. So you have LI, LI. So that's a list item. All right, so one of our list items is going to be a link to the page called index. Let me just take a quick look and make sure I'm doing it the same way the book. Okay, they're referring to it as home. Okay, that makes more sense. So we're going to call the link home. And then we're going to have 2 other ones, and I'm just going to copy and paste. One is about, and the other is contact. All right, now I'm going to just clean this up by getting rid of those extra spaces. All right, so let's take a look at this. I'm going to save it. And then let me reload it over here. All right, now there's our navigation. Okay, so it looks pretty good. Here's right up near the top, right after the header. And now what we need to do is make these pieces of text into links. And when they're links, they'll have the underline. They'll be in blue and have the underline, which is the default appearance for links. All right, so let me do that. And here's how you make a link. Before the word, and this is going to be similar since you made an email link a while ago. Pretty similar process. Ahref equals, and then what we do is we put the name of the file that we're linking to. So the name of the file, the name of the home page is always index with a lowercase i.htm or html. Okay? Ahref, and then we have to close that a tag. And let's just save it and watch what happens when we reload it over here. All right, now we have a clickable link. If we click on it, nothing happens. Why? Well, we are already on the index page. So there's nothing different that we're going to see when we do that. All right, so I'm just going to do a little copy and paste again just because this speeds it up a little bit. Copy that, paste it there, paste it there. And just so I don't forget, I'm going to take that ending tag, paste it there, paste it there. And now what will we name these files? Well, let's make it real easy. Homepage is always, the file name is index.html. Our about page, the file name could be anything, but let's make it easy to understand. Let's just call it about, and same thing here. Let's just call this contact. That way it's going to make this process simple because the names are going to match up. Okay, so I'm going to save that, go back here, I'm going to reload it. Now we've got the blue links, which means these are links we have not yet clicked on. The purple one we've already clicked on, so it automatically changes colors. About, file not found. Well, of course, it's looking for a file named about.html, and we don't have it. Same thing here, contact. Click on that. And since we haven't yet made a file called contact, it can't find it. So what I'm going to do now, as soon as I get rid of the spinning beach ball of death, okay, what I'm going to do now is, for the moment, let me just clean that one up a little bit. I'm going to stop, give you a chance to do this. Then we'll come back in the next tutorial and actually set up those other pages and make a few changes on them and add a little content to them as well. So what we did is we took our existing home page. We added some comments to make it clear where the divs start and end, to eliminate some possible confusion there. And then we set up a brand new div that we're calling nav, because that's where the navigation is going to go. Within that div, we set up an unordered list, a UL, 3 items in the list. They're labeled, or the text is home, about, and contact, and each one of them is a link to a page, to the index page, which is the home page, to the about page, which we haven't made yet, but we're going to do that in the next tutorial, and to the contact page, which we'll also do in the next tutorial. So there we go. We're just about ready. We've got our nav on the home page, and now all we need to do is make a couple of pages to link to, and we'll have our little mini site. So that's what we'll be doing in part 2 of this tutorial.